Aside from Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight in modern English, is perhaps the most compelling and entertaining work of medieval literature. It's generally agreed that the Gawain poet, who also wrote The Pearl and two other shorter works, was a well-educated man with a keen interest in hunting, and that he was active in the northwest of England during the latter part of the 14th century. His precise identity is unknown. The only surviving manuscript dates almost certainly from the last quarter of the 14th century, and the original text is assumed to have been written around that time, or perhaps somewhat earlier. During the 1960s and 70s, scholars like Gervase Matthew, John Burrow and Michael Bennett all assumed a date of around 1390, while W.G. Cook, writing in 1989, argues for an earlier date. As for the dialect in which it is written, most scholars follow Angus MacIntosh in supposing it to originate from an area around the border between Cheshire, Shropshire and Staffordshire, though some, notably Ad Putter and Myra Stokes, whose 2015 edition of the works of the Gawain poet is probably the go-to text for serious students of the subject, propose an area further north, where Lancashire, Yorkshire and Cheshire meet. Scholars are also divided over the issue of whether the dialect of the author who composed Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is the same as that of the scribe who wrote it down, in what is the only surviving copy. There may even have been one or more intermediate scribes, making the surviving manuscript a copy of a copy. This has implications for the pronunciation, and of course it complicates attempts to identify the author. Here are the opening lines of the poem. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Sithen the siege and the assault what cessed at Troia, the Boers Britain and Brent, the Brontes and Askers. The Turk that the Tramis of Tresound there wrought was tried for his treachery, the truest on earth. It was Aeneas the Athel and his here kind, that sithen depressed provinces and patrones become, well nay of all the well in the Westialis, pro rich Romulus to Roma riches him swither. With great bobangs that bore he bigus upon first, and nevnes hit his own anom as it knew hot. Tirius to Tuscan until this beginners, Langebed in Lombardy liftis up homes, and for all the French flood Felix Brutus, on money bonkers full broad, Bretagne he setteth with win. Where wear and rack and wonder, besithers hats want therein, and oft both bliss and blunder, full skit hath skifted sin. After the siege and the assault of Troy had ended, the city destroyed and burned to brands and ashes, the man who fashioned the trappings of treason there was tried for his treachery, the surest on earth. That was the noble Aeneas and his great kinsmen, who went on to conquer lands and become lords of almost all the wealth of the islands to the west. The great Romulus swiftly reaches Rome, and with great pomp he founds that city and names it after himself, as it is still named now. Tyreus goes to Tuscany and builds towns. Longbeard builds homes in Lombardy, and far across the French sea, Felix Brutus, on many broad banks, establishes Britain joyfully, where war and woe and wonder have by turns held sway, and bliss and strife have often swiftly followed on each other's heels since then. One of the biggest challenges the manuscript poses for a recitation of this kind is the schwa at the end of some of the words. At the time the poem was written, the word final schwa was no longer sounded in everyday conversation, but there are times when the metre of the poem clearly requires it to be pronounced. However, instead of adding an E at the ends of the words where the schwa is pronounced and leaving it off where it isn't needed, the scribe appears to add or omit the final E at random. So there's quite a lot we don't know about Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. We have a rough idea, but we don't know precisely who wrote it, or when they wrote it, or where they wrote it. But we know what it means, right? Right? Well, no. Derek Pearsall, a medieval specialist who was a professor at Harvard, says, "I am still not sure what it is about." He doesn't mean by that he doesn't understand the plot, the storyline, the events that take place. He's talking about the poem's deeper meaning. Is it a poem about the myth of rebirth, the slaying of the old god at the midwinter turn of the year? Is it essentially Christian? Is it a kind of comedy? An exploration of the tension between courtly and civilized values on the one hand, and the rude powers of natural impulse on the other? Or a kind of satire on the disturbance of the moral and chivalric assumptions appropriate to romance and the age of chivalry? Or perhaps Alan Markman got it right back in 1957, and the whole aim is to show what a splendid man Gawain is. Or a mixture of these, or something else entirely. Even at a more superficial level, it's not always clear what the poem means. The Turk that the Tramis of Tresound wrought was tried for his treachery, the truest on earth. That can be understood as meaning that Aeneas's treachery was treachery indeed, but the intended sense may have been that Aeneas was tried for treachery and found to be the truest, that is, the most honourable man on earth. And the word bobance is equally ambiguous. Is it being used in a negative sense here to indicate his egotistical pride, or does it simply show that he has great authority and acts with the dignity befitting his state? I particularly remember, when I first read it at the age of 18, being struck by the image of the Green Knight having his head cut off at King Arthur's Christmas feast, and the head rolling to the floor. That fell it foined with her fate, there it forth rolled. The translation I was working with, like most translations I think, interprets that as meaning that the head rolled towards the assembled guests who spurned it with their feet. But Jessie Weston has the head being spurned by the hoofs of the Green Knight's horse. Who knows? It's almost as if the more you study Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, the less you know about it. One thing's for sure though, and that is that it's a rattling good read with plenty of vivid scenes. It's also interesting structurally with its use of alliteration, the usually four strong stresses with a varying number of weak syllables in each line, and the bob and wheel, 5 rhyming lines, one very short one, followed by 4 more in an A-B, A-B, A rhyming pattern. Sir Gawain and the Pearl, written by the same author, made a big impression on me when I first read them 50-something years ago. If you read nothing else from that period, I'd urge you to read these, in the original if possible, with a translation at hand to help you make sense of it.